Magnus is one of the most popular climbers on the planet. His mission is to entertain and educate you about all things climbing. This podcast offers practical tips so you can become well-rounded and enjoy your climbing journey. What are the basic climbing techniques that everyone should understand?
I think for non-climbers, the disciplines can be pretty confusing. I know there's speed climbing. I mean, in the Olympics, there's bouldering, lead, and speed climbing. Speed climbing is pretty self-explanatory. It's whoever can get to the top the fastest. The route is always the same, so nothing changes. And then bouldering is where you climb up to 5 meters and you don't have any rope, so you just land on mats instead. And that's probably right now it's the most popular form of climbing. It's what most people do. And then there's lead climbing, which is a discipline that I competed in, where you're attached to rope, and walls are usually around 15 meters. And in competitions, it's about who can get the highest. So every hold has a number, and whoever can reach the highest hold will win. So those are the 3 different disciplines. I mean, techniques, there's so many different techniques. I think the most important thing is to, I don't know, I would say the most important technique is probably foot technique, like basic, being able to place your feet well. Knowing how to place your feet is probably the most important technique.
Coming from a background of calisthenics, I've dabbled in a little bit of rock climbing myself over the years with harness, just your standard rock climbing. And I noticed the first time I went into it quite confident, I could do plenty of pull-ups, muscle-ups, weighted pull-ups and stuff. But it highlighted to me the importance of using the feet. Just from a basic level, over-relying on the upper body was something that I found was something that I did quite naturally, because I don't usually use my legs in general training at the gym.
Yeah, it's the first advice you're going to get if you sign up for a beginner's course is to use your feet. But it's also kind of ironic, because after the beginner stage, you don't really use your feet at all anymore, because the climbing becomes steeper and more powerful. So, you need a certain strength in your legs, but it's pretty much all upper body strength. If you look at the best climbers in the world, they have these tiny legs and like massive upper bodies. So pretty much anyone has the strength in their legs. It's more that they just need to know how to use them.
And I'm sure that planning out the route that you are going to take becomes more important, because I found that when I started to do some more advanced routes, I'd get halfway up, 3/4 up, I'd get stuck, and then fatigue would set in. I'd start panicking and having issues knowing how to just coordinate my body and make that next step. Do you have any tips for people that get stuck on the wall?
No, it's just, doing it a lot is going to help, obviously. I think learning by doing is the best way. And then, as you get better, you're going to plan. Like when you see people climbing for the first time, they just plan the next move, they see the next hold. Oh, how do I get to there? But if you're a more advanced climber, if you climb for a few years, you don't only see the next hold, you see the next maybe 4, 5, 6 holds. So you know that you have to grab this with your right hand in order to get the next with your left. So you plan further ahead than you do at the beginning. So I think that's the main difference. But in the beginning, like everyone is going to feel the same way. So you just have to do it a bunch. And I think that's what is so appealing with climbing, is that you have this really steep learning curve in the beginning. You feel like every session you get a little bit better. And even if you climb for a little bit and you take a break for a year or 2 and you go back to climbing, you're going to feel so much better, because it's muscle memory. So the technique and everything is still gonna be there.
I like that simplicity of do the thing to get better at. No surprise that you need a rock climb to get better at rock climbing. Any advice for like a sweet spot of duration and frequency per week to get that really steady progress as a climber?
That depends on where you are. In the beginning, You can't climb for that long. The skin is also going to be an issue in the beginning. You're going to get flappers, all that stuff. And I think the most important thing to know in the beginning is that it's going to get better. If you do it a lot, you're not going to feel, your arms are not going to be that stiff the next day. Your skin is not going to be that much of an issue anymore. So yeah, it's very individual. It's also depends on your body type and like how heavy you are and how much you've done it before. But skin is also, it's like, even for me, it's an issue. If I don't have good skin, sometimes I have to do a rest day just because my skin is not good.
Do you have any tips for maintenance in regards to skincare to make sure that you can train?
I think there's some tutorials on YouTube where, you can moisturize, sandpaper, all that stuff. I don't really do that so much. Also washing your hands right after climbing, because you want to wash off the chalk, because if your hands are chalked up, they're not going to heal, or the skin is not going to heal because it's too dry. So washing your hands immediately after climbing is probably the best tip.
Perfect. I like that. It's not the glamorous side of things. We just think, oh, my muscles, are they recovered? I can go back and climb. But you don't want something as minuscule as skincare holding you back from doing what you love.
Yeah.
How about choosing the correct difficulty for your level? Because I imagine if you're doing climbs that are too easy, you won't progress. If you're doing climbs that are way too challenging, there's no point. Any advice for finding what that sweet spot is?
Yeah, it's pretty easy in climbing because you have the grading scale. It looks a little bit different in Europe, the US. I think Australia has the same as the European. But, you just find a grade where you're comfortable, or in the beginning, like warm up first, find something that's comfortable, and then progress into something that's not comfortable, because you definitely want to be uncomfortable. Falling is part of climbing. I think that's the biggest mistake people make, is to find routes that are easy for them instead of challenging, because they don't want to look dumb and fall, but falling is part of climbing. I fall all the time because I try things that are super hard for me, and everyone should do that, even at a beginner level.
That's really refreshing to hear, because we all have an ego to an extent. We want to have some pride in our performance, but knowing that we do have to challenge ourselves in order to level up, it's refreshing hearing that from a world-class climber like yourself.
Yeah.
So for most people, they can get to a level of V5 difficulty, and it's common to plateau at this point. How do you overcome this level as a climber?
I think by changing it up a little bit. Like always when people ask me, my best advice is just to climb with someone at the higher level. If you climb with a V7 climber, you're naturally going to reach for that level. And it's not going to look so impossible. But if you're still climbing with people who are at the same level or below you, V6, V7 is just going to feel impossible. So I think, by trying harder grades and by climbing with people who climb those grades, I think is the best way.
What are some realistic expectations with regard to progressing beyond that level? Is it going to take months, years? What have you seen from your experience?
Yeah, from V6 to V7, it's probably going to take, it depends on how dedicated you are, but maybe half a year or something if you're really dedicated. And then after that, it's going to take more. Every grade, the higher you get, the harder it's going to be to progress. And you can also find something that really suits you or that is super easy. Grades it's not science. They're not super accurate. So you could just find something that's really easy for you. But I think you would fool yourself by doing that. So I think it's also good to, instead of always chasing that next grade, to be more comfortable on the current grade that you're on. So try to do like 10 V5s before you not try, but before you do a V6. I think it's good to try harder grades, but that shouldn't be the main objective, I think it's more impressive with a person who can climb V5 in all styles than one person who like found the perfect V6 for them and only did that.
Seems as if measuring your progress is something that's important to stay motivated. In addition to the level that you're at, is there any other things you look at in your climbing training that you look at as metrics of progress?
Yeah, I do have a lot of strength exercises that I do that I feel works as metrics for how fit I feel, like weighted pull-ups, dead hangs, because it's sometimes hard in climbing to measure where you're at because the grades are so different, even from gym to gym. It's a massive difference. But those things like the hangboard, the holds will always be the same. The weight that you put on when you do a pull-up will always be the same. So I like to measure that stuff, and I also like to train that stuff. But again, it doesn't really mean that you've gotten better at climbing, because a lot of the best climbers in the world are not super strong in that stuff. Like some of the strongest climbers in the world can't even do a one-arm pull-up. I mean, I say can't even as if it's easy, but for like the best climber in the world, you would think that it's easy, but it's not easy. And in many ways, it doesn't seem like it even matters if you can do a one-arm pull-up in climbing.
That's what I find fascinating about fitness at large, is there's no one correct answer or one way to do something well. Like you said, with climbing, there's people that are tall and skinny. There's people that are shorter and a little bit stockier. There's people that have greater flexibility, greater strength, greater explosiveness. And it's those different factors that make up the person. It doesn't have to be just one thing, which is really uplifting for people. If they're not the best in strength, they can find other ways to make their climbing better.
Yeah, and I think that's something special for climbing, because there's going to be obviously always different moves. So on a really reachy move with low footholds, that's going to favor the taller climber, while a really compressed move is going to favor the shorter climber. So and that's also what you see in competitions. Actually, when I started competing, I feel like most climbers had similar body types. They were all around like 170 centimeters tall and weighed and very light. But now you actually see a lot of tall climbers doing really well, like between up to 190. Do you use centimeters, the metric system in
Over here in Australia,
yeah. So you see a lot of different body types, some muscular, some skinnier, and I think that's good to see that regardless of body type, you can climb well.
We know that we have to climb more to get better at climbing, but surely there's other things we can improve to start to work on our weaknesses. Some people struggle with flexibility. Is this important for climbing and progressing in your climbing level?
I think a certain flexibility is important. So if you're not very flexible, I think, stretching is good. But a lot of the top climbers I know are actually pretty stiff. So it's not needed, but it's definitely an advantage, I think. But it's also something about like your upper body should be a little bit stiff, because usually a stiff body is also a strong body. You don't want it to be too flexible. But your legs and hips should be very flexible in climbing.
Any specific drills or stretches that you found most useful transfer to climbing?
I don't even know what they're called. I would have to demonstrate them. But
like a Cossack squat, something like that, where you're opening up the adductors like into a splits, like that.
Yeah, where you sit with your legs or hips like that, kind of almost like a split, but just with your knees to the floor instead of your feet to the floor. Yeah, stuff like that. Things that open your hips, help your hips to be closer to the wall, I think is good.
I like how your answer was really succinct, and this highlights that maybe flexibility isn't the most important thing. I think we get caught up if we're starting to research climbing, we come across tutorials, it's starting to work on all these little components like flexibility, all these best strength exercises. But I gather from speaking to you that the climbing itself is probably the best flexibility work you can do. If you're doing tons of big reaches with your legs up the wall, you're training the split in a way functional for the activity.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think so. Yeah.
How about with strength training to support your climbing practice? What does this look like in a day, a week, and what would you recommend?
Well, I did too much strength training, I think. I was, much stronger than I needed to be. I always liked that part. So I used to do a bunch of like one-arm pull-ups and muscle-ups and all that stuff just because I like to do it. But I don't think it really helped my climbing that much. So I would say if you're naturally strong and you can do a lot of pull-ups and muscle up and all that stuff, it's not going to help you much to get stronger at that stuff. But if you're not so strong, if you're more like a technical climber who lacks strength, then I would say it's good to do some of that. And I think regardless, I would say that hangboarding is a good supplement for climbing. That's something that I wish that I found out sooner, because hangboarding is targeting grip strength, finger strength, and that is definitely the most important thing in climbing.
With the hangboard, what approaches would you be using for that?
Well, first of all, it's something you should be a little bit careful of in the beginning when your fingers are not strong enough. So you should go do it gradually. But I think some beginners are too afraid of the hangboard, so they won't do it. But it's actually, if you do it in the right way, it can be a pretty safe way to build finger strength. Sometimes it's better than just going crazy on a boulder wall, because it's more controlled on a hangboard. But I would say it's something that people should look up, because you want to go more in depth on what you do before starting it. But like in the beginning, you want to start with a longer hang time, and then you decrease it the stronger you get. So in the beginning, you can do maybe like 20-second hangs or something, which is a lot, and with or without weights, depending on how strong you are. But and then you go down in hang time, but you also increase the weight, and that is harder on the fingers, but also it's gonna make your fingers stronger. But it's something that you have to build up to that level.
That's great that you highlighted that there's a minimum point where you can get that level of finger strength, but doing more offers diminishing returns, because we hear, oh yeah, finger strength's important in climbing. And I'm sure you get so many overexcited teenagers that are doing 3-minute hangs or something really over the top. And just having these minimum thresholds that you can do on command is a good reflection of your climbing capacity. So that the hang that you said, what about minimum recommendations for the other big ones like pull-ups? How many would you recommend?
I would say if you can do 10 pull-ups, you should start adding weight. Just add weight until you can. And then I would also add so much weight that you can only do maybe 3 pull-ups once in a while, because that's going to be more strength than 10 pull-ups is more endurance, I guess.
Interesting, because if someone comes to rock climbing, they see climbing as an endurance sport, whereas you're recommending us to build our strength to support endurance.
It depends on what you want to do in climbing, but I think most people these days want to get stronger, especially for bouldering. And for bouldering, I would say doing fewer reps is better. And even if you want to do endurance, I would say it's better to do it on the wall ups. So I don't see any need for doing like 20 plus pull-ups in climbing. So
people can get into the trap of doing too much strength training. Is there any other bad habits or techniques that you see people make? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot, but I can't think of anything right now. Either in their workout design or their day-to-day approach to climbing? No, I mean, it's like what I talked about earlier, that people climb not hard enough, like they don't challenge themselves enough, just trying things they know they can do instead of like basically not falling enough. I think that's a mistake that people make. I think also being afraid of climbing with someone who's better than themselves.
because it's intimidating, if you climb with someone better than yourself. It's always nice to feel good. And if you climb with people at your own level or lower, you're going to feel great, but it's not going to challenge you and you're not going to get better. But I think that's mostly it.
You've trained with some of the world's best climbers. I'd love to hear from direct experience, training versus following a workout plan. There tends to be different schools of thought when it comes to improving climbing. What do you see the highest level people do most often?
I see them following sort of a plan, but that plan changes a lot, I would say, based on how they feel. So you don't want to be a slave to your program and do it regardless. You want to feel like how your body feels. And when I climbed, a lot of people didn't have a program. But I think now people have programs usually, but I could be wrong. I think it's in many ways it's less science based than people think. It's not very scientific. It's more just like you have to push yourself. You have to climb something really hard. You have to push yourself to the point where you fall off things and try it again and learn and do it better next time. And that's the most important thing you do. The other things, that's just like maybe 10%. So that's if you're already at a really high level, maybe you want to do a little bit of all the other stuff. But if you're below that, just like climbing, trying really hard and failing and trying again, that is going to be the best way to progress. People like to overcomplicate things, I think. They want to think that they need a very detailed program of like what you're going to do every session, every hour. But I think just motivating yourself to try really hard. That's the most important thing.
Complexity is a common trap in climbing, in calisthenics, at the gym, and it's often masquerading doing the work. You know what I mean? It's like you learn about stuff, you learn these little tips and tricks, and it's designed to make it feel good and make it easier. When I'm hearing a theme with what you're talking about, it's challenge, hard work, basic, and it seems as if the best climbers in the world avoid those distractions of the shiny object syndrome of some new exercise that's going to make you better, but just sticking to the hard stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%, because that is the hard stuff. The hard stuff is to motivate yourself before an attempt to, okay, I'm going to try really freaking hard. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to try my best. And then when you fall off, then have the motivation to try it again and again and again. That is really hard. And as you say, if you get some alternative way of doing it, that it seems easier, just doing a bunch of laps or stretching more or stuff that is just easier to do, then people are going to jump on that naturally. But definitely I don't think there's no easy way to succeed in climbing. You have to put in the hard work, and you have to like the hard work too. I think that's the main thing. If it feels like hard work, it's also gonna, maybe it's not the right sport for you. Because I really enjoyed pushing myself and being in that zone, where you don't think of anything else. You just think, next few moves, one move further. Like, I enjoy that part.
Today's show sponsor is Fitness FAQs. Do you want to learn how to master calisthenics? Fitness FAQs has the best workout programs from beginner to advanced level. Use the coupon code podcast10 at checkout to save 10% off when shopping at fitnessfaqs.com. You spoke about auto-regulation, which is modifying what you do, how much you do based on how you feel. And I can tell that most of the time you're working as hard as you possibly can. But I think it's really important that we tell people that we're not perfect. We're not showing up giving 100% every single session, every single time we go in there. Any advice for trying to have that balance of not being too firm on yourself, but not too fair? As in, you go in trying your best, but if it's not there, you're not going to kill yourself if it's not.
Yeah. No, I think that's probably one of the biggest mistakes I did was not resting enough. I always felt like 80%. I never felt completely rested. And you want to feel completely rested sometimes in between sessions and stuff. You don't want to always be tired, because that means you're never going to have like the highest quality sessions that you could have. Like if you go to the gym and don't feel great, you should just do something else. And I also think in the beginning, it's important with volume, so even though you do want to push yourself, you also want to make sure that you don't try so hard that you only try 2 routes a day or something. You want to get a lot of volume in as well. So maybe start the session by doing a lot of different problems, like doing your anti-style. If you don't like slabs, everyone says they're not good at slabs. Do a bunch of slabs. They're not so physical, and then try hard at the end of the session, and make sure that you recover between the sessions. And maybe not every session, but once in a while you have to really recover. And also be careful with injuries, because that's gonna really slow your progress if you get injured. And especially see that now a lot of people get really strong really fast and then they get injured. So just have some patience, I think, is important.
As you said, climbing is just as much of an art as it is a science, and getting that delicate balance of intensity, volume, and frequency is something that you just have to keep a constant eye on. You can't predict how this is going to be in 6 weeks' time. Even with the perfect plan on paper, the perfect lifestyle, stuff is bound to happen. And as you said, injuries can happen. Overuse is pretty common in climbing. Any advice for mitigating or reducing injury risk?
I think being all-rounded strong is good for injuries. In climbing is you use pretty much all muscles in the body, but you also, everything is like pulling this way, you're never pushing. So training the antagonists, I think, is good. That's something I've done a lot, and I've never been injured really.
So doing more pushing as a climber?
Yeah, I would say so. I think that helps build stronger shoulders, and just in general, it's gonna have everything more tight and put in place. Kind of, your shoulders are gonna be more rounded, and I think that's. I think most people would agree that being all-rounded is good to prevent injuries. And the second thing is just to listen to your body. I think, I haven't been injured, so I shouldn't talk too much on this, but I think usually you get a sign before you get injured. Something feels a little bit weird or doesn't feel right, but then you still do it and you get injured. I think that's part of the reason why I haven't been injured, is because I've listened to my body, and when I get those signs that maybe this is not right, maybe I should rest, I rest. So I think that's part of the reason.
I agree 100%. And I've got a background in physical therapy. I'm a qualified physiotherapist in Australia, and I'd say that load management is the biggest thing that you can do. If you climb 3 days a week and suddenly you start climbing 6 days a week, your chance of getting injured so much higher. So very progressive and patient increases in your training load is step number 1. Number 2, I would say, don't just overdo the same type of climbing, not the same route, the exact same techniques. You can mix it up, like you said, with some hangboard sessions and stuff, and you can still climb, but just don't do a lot of the same thing, because that's a huge risk factor for overuse injury in the elbows and stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's a good advice. And I think that's easier in climbing than other sports, because there's so many different types of climbing. And I think even like a lot of people who get into climbing now, they only boulder. But I think it's good to maybe try the auto belay or try top roping, and maybe eventually also lead, which is more endurance based, just because, like you say, mixing it up is good. Yeah, I think that's something that's easy to forget when you get into it. You just want, I just want to be a strong boulderer, so I'm just going to do that a bunch. And it is true, if you want to get strong at bouldering, doing a lot of bouldering, that's what's going to get you strong at bouldering. But if you want to stay away from injuries, and I think it's good to mix it up.
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Someone could say, I want to get really good at bouldering, so I'm just going to do it as hard and as much as I can. But then that approach, if you get injured, you actually delay that progress. So it seems to be the person that's more patient and can actually hold themselves back, because I don't think a lack of passion is the issue with people not getting to the end stage of their climbing goals. It's more just maybe too much excitement. They can't hold themselves back. I see those that succeed are able to, as you said, listen to their body, think, okay, I'm starting to feel some aches and pains, and I'm going to adjust my routine just for a short time, and then I can get back to what I love with full force.
Yeah.
In terms of climbing efficiency, is there any methods that you use to improve this?
Depends on what type of climbing you're referring to, but lead climbing, where you climb with a rope, that's where efficiency is most important. Because you have 20 or up to 60 meters of climbing when you're outside climbing. So you have to be efficient. I think the most important thing for most people is just kind of be pacing, to keep the pace up. Because as you get tired, you tend to climb slower and slower and slower, and that's just going to cost you more and more power. And also, as you get tired, you get more and more hesitant, but it should be the opposite. That's usually what I told myself in competitions and stuff. When I start to feel tired, I should do the opposite. I should hesitate less, and I should climb even faster. Because that means that you don't have a lot of power left, and you have to get to the top as quickly as possible. And in order to do that, you have to take some chances.
This comes back to what you said earlier about perhaps sticking to a level of challenge that you can somewhat comfortably do with a high success rate, but now using speed as an indicator of progress. You can time yourself and reflect on how quick you are on week 1 versus week 4.
Yeah.
Indoor versus outdoor climbing. What are the differences between these?
Apart from the obvious differences where the indoor climbing is plastic, where you climb on plastic, outdoor climbing, you climb outdoors. Indoors, it's man-made, so there's a plan behind everything. Outdoors, there's not a plan behind things, or it depends if you believe in God, maybe there is, but yeah, I think that nature just made it the way it is. Probably did not intend it for it to be climbed. But apart from that, outside is usually more, because of that, it's more what you call cruxy. So it's not as even, inside a route setter will try to make every move about the same difficulty so that it matches. But outside it can be like super easy and then just really, really hard and then super easy again. And also outside, there's not really a limit to how high routes can be. Inside, you usually climb between 10 and 20 meters. Outside, it can be between 10 and 70 meters is one pitch, but then you can also climb 1,000 meters if you climb multi-pitch. One pitch is just the length of the rope, basically. If you climb a multi-pitch, if you climb in Yosemite, or like if you climb a big wall, you climb one pitch and then the belayer comes up to you and then you climb the next pitch. And then, so even though you climbed 1,000 meters, it's not like you climb 1,000 meters without rest. You rest every pitch.
Is there any carryover from indoor to outdoor climbing, or is it quite specific to each one?
No, there's definitely a carryover. Yeah. But if you've only done indoor climbing and you go outside, you're going to feel that the grades are really hard, because like looking for the hold is very different. Inside you just grab a hold and it's very obvious how you grab it, but outside you have to like move around and try different methods and move the finger slightly, get your finger on the right crystal. It's more detailed than inside. And also it's going to wear out your skin quicker. Obviously there's weather and stuff. Sometimes it's a little bit wet, and things can even break outside. which can be very scary if you're not used to it. You know, you pull on a hold and then all of a sudden it breaks. So just stuff like that. I think when I started climbing, most people climb inside and outside, but now you see just a generation of people who only climb inside, which is just new. But I don't judge that at all. I think indoor climbing has become its own thing, kind of. And just because you like indoor climbing doesn't necessarily mean you like outdoor climbing. I think even a lot of people who are into like video games and stuff get into climbing because it's like, it's sort of that video game, you know, when you go inside, there are different colors. You have to solve a puzzle with your body.
It's gamified with the levels as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I see a lot of gamers get into climbing.
Free solo is something that's gotten a lot of popularity in recent years. Can you talk to us about how crazy this actually is? Because as a layperson, we look at free soloing, it just looks absolutely insane. We almost can't comprehend the difficulty.
Well, the difficulty is not that high usually. When you free solo, you take it down like a lot of levels. So it's a lot of the things that climbers do with a rope can be more dangerous than without a rope. It's just doing things without a rope is so easy for non-climbers to understand. They understand the consequence if you fall.
Yeah.
But in many times, you know, when you climb without a rope, most of the time, you're 99.9% sure you're not going to fall. Even if a hold breaks, you're still probably going to be able to hold on because it's so many. Like if I climb 9A, I would climb free solo at maybe a 7A level max. And that is something I haven't fallen on in as long as I can remember, you know. So the chance of me falling on that specific day is very low. But if you do fall, yeah, then the consequence is that you're going to die, obviously. But there are not many people climbing, like free soloing at a very high level. Obviously, everyone's seen Alex Honnold and the free solo movie. And that is crazy because it's at such a high level. And Alex's max level is not that much higher than what he did without a rope. And that's what makes it so crazy. But I could easily go outside and climb like a 5A without a rope and it would look really impressive to a non-climber. But if I climb like a sketchy big wall trad climb with a rope, it would not look hard for people, but that would be way more dangerous because the chance of me falling would be way higher. Obviously, if I fell, I would have a rope, so there's a slight chance that I would survive, but the rope doesn't always catch you because if it's attached to shitty gear, it's not going to hold. So, I feel like especially as a climber, you get asked like about free soloing a lot, you know, it's something that not many climbers do, not at all. And when climbers do it, they do it at a much lower level than they normally would climb at. So it's not like, I wouldn't say it's reckless, you know, it's very calculated what they do. And it's also, if you do it, you practice that route many times beforehand. But that said, like what Alex did is completely crazy. Free soloing, free rider is just insane.
Isn't it fascinating how the hardest skills or elements in a particular sport aren't recognized for their difficulty in the public? A great example in the world of circus arts and performance, the performer will lower down into a single arm elbow lever or a croc, and the crowd goes absolutely nuts. Anyone that's done this skill knows that it's so easy to learn. You can teach a beginner to do it in 15 minutes, whereas they're doing a full planche or a one-arm handstand on someone's head. The crowd's just quiet.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's hard for people to tell how difficult things are, and I know it's the same with me when I watch things like, you know, snowboarding. What looks like a crazy trick to me is probably not crazy, and yeah, the other way around too. It's really hard to tell when you're not doing the sport, But yeah, free soloing is just really easy for non-climbers to understand. And but there's impressive free soloing and there's not so impressive free soloing. And it's hard to judge because everything looks crazy.
You've been fortunate to train with people like Alex Honnold and some other of the world's best climbers. What do they all share in common? I know personalities are different, but what do they all share?
I think just the love for what they're doing for climbing is what they share. And that's not even with climbing, with just anyone. You know, you see that the best people at any field is just the most psyched, the most excited person. Because I've been around not only climbers, not only the best climbers in the world, but around a lot of the best athletes in the world, and they all have that in common, that they're just super obsessed with what they're doing. It's like all they think about, all they talk about, it's their whole life. And yeah, in many ways, I think that's what the reason I was never like the best climber in the world, even though I was at a very high level for many years, like maybe top 10 in the world, but I never became the best. And I think that's because I didn't have that obsession that I see the best climbers have.
That's so true. And it's the passion that they have. If you ask them, what would you do if there was a world without money? They'd say climbing straight away. And that level of love for it allows you to do it at a high intensity and for the decades it takes to get good, because I'm sure there's people that say they want to be the best or they want to become a professional climber and their actions don't meet that. But from what you've said with these people, it's on another level. It's just they live, sleep, breathe, and eat what they love.
Yeah, I think it's hard to tell from the outside. Probably everyone who's into climbing or at a top level looks like they're dedicated and motivated and stuff. But it's like when you see people who are like number one in their sport, it's different.
Can you talk us through the reality of what it took you to become successful in climbing? Like the training, the dedication, just walk us through what comes to mind.
Well, it's a lot of things, but yeah, in the beginning, I probably had a little bit of that, you know, the hunger that I'm describing, I see in people who are number one. It was everything I talked about, everything I dreamed of, was to become good at climbing. And that was before, like, there wasn't any there were no professional climbers in my country, hardly any professional climbers in the world. I think if you were a professional climber, you still made below minimum wage. So it was definitely not for the money I started climbing. I just knew that I wanted to become as good as possible and do it for as long as possible. And I was just immediately hooked from the first time I tried climbing. I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I tried a lot of other sports, and I immediately quit everything else I was doing and just focused on climbing. And I also, looking back at it, that was a shame, but I lost contact with all my friends at school. I had only climbing friends. I kind of thought everyone who wasn't a climber was kind of dumb. I didn't have anything in common with them. I didn't want to hang out with anyone who wasn't a climber because that's all I wanted to talk about. So I feel like I probably when I was like 12, 13 years old, I became a little bit arrogant, especially when I started doing well in climbing, because that's all I wanted to do was become good at climbing. And when I succeeded at that, I think I became a little bit arrogant and thought everyone else was idiots. But then I quickly realized that climbing is not big in Norway. If I want to become really good, I have to climb with the best climbers in the world. And that's easier said than done, because if you're not a great climber yourself, you're never going to be able to climb with those people. So I slowly had to build up doing well in international competitions and progress to that level where I could actually befriend the best climbers in the world. So when I was like 16 to 20 something, I spent a lot of time in Innsbruck in Austria, because that's where the best climbers lived. And I was fortunate enough to train with the best climbers in the world, and I learned a lot from them, and that helped me progress even further. So, but I basically gave up. There was no social life outside climbing. There was nothing else outside climbing. I was willing to die to become as good as possible at climbing. That's how much I cared. So
what's remarkable is your transition from being a professional climber then into turning climbing into a profitable business through your social media influence, your YouTube fame as well. How was that transition to becoming a creator and making a business out of this?
It was pretty hard in the beginning because I did have some sponsors, and that was good because that after I retired in 2017, I could still make a little bit of money from my sponsors. So I had some time there where I was like, okay, if I still want to please my sponsors, I should probably do something else. I'm going to start doing YouTube. But in the beginning, it didn't do well at all. I started with vlogs because this was the time where daily vloggers, or like daily uploads, that was like the thing.
Classic YouTube.
Yeah, the algorithm would reward you if you did daily uploads, like Casey Neistat and all those guys. So I started doing vlogs, but I quickly realized that my life is not that interesting. What people want to see is me climbing and training and stuff. So I turned it more into that. But that was like 2 years later that it blew up, and I'd already made like 100 videos and like long form, like 20-minute videos. So I think I went into making videos with the same passion that I started climbing with, because I never thought that I would make money on YouTube, really. I just thought it would be something I would do to please my sponsors. When you see, when I started making, I'd made already like 60, 70 videos, and I would make like $15 a month, You just think that this is never going to be possible. I'm never going to make a living off of YouTube anyways. But if I can please my sponsors, I have some hardcore fans on YouTube, the maybe like 5 or 10,000 people who watch me. But I never thought it would become a business. But I think it's a good mindset to have when you get into something. Because I think if you go into YouTube, same with climbing, same with anything, with I'm going to make a lot of money on this, you're just going to burn out completely. You have to love what you're doing, and I really love making videos. So that's, I think, was the secret for me. And I think I was the worst YouTuber ever. I had the worst starting point because I was very camera shy. I'd been around a lot of cameras. I knew a little bit about cameras, but no editing experience at all, and I was really bad in front of the camera. So yeah, it was a rough start, but then, I've told this many times before, but then just some random things happened, like this big fitness bodybuilder YouTuber channel contacted me. They flew me out to the US, and I did a bunch of videos with them. Not only did it was really good for me to be in their videos. That blew me up on YouTube, but also I learned a lot from them and how they did things. In the past, I started with making a video, and then I decided the title and thumbnail in the end, but they taught me the most basic YouTube thing, that you should start with making a thumbnail and a title. You should have a video idea, and then you should make the video, not the other way around. Stuff like that. And then, things started to take off on YouTube, and that was in late 2018, 2019, I think. And since then I've just been grinding, trying to improve, and also kind of doing videos outside climbing, because I knew that if I want to keep on growing, I probably have to reach outside climbing as well.
How do you manage your own training with the filming of physical, intense content?
It's been pretty hard, especially when I did all the editing myself. I did all the editing myself up until 9 months, or almost a year ago. And then you just spent a all time in front of the computer and filming yourself and all that stuff. But now I have editors, and that helps quite a lot. But it has definitely affected the way I train. But I don't need a lot of training. In many ways, like I talked about earlier, I think that I trained too hard before, and now like every time I train, I get a lot of those like really high quality sessions because I rest a lot. And also I've done my 10,000 or more than 10,000 hours of training. So I think it's more maintenance, and it's a lot easier to maintain something than to build something. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm trying to maintain what I've already built.
For sure. Well, Magnus, your story is motivating. From a professional climber, transition to a professional YouTuber, successful business. We really respect what you've done for the climbing culture. I think you're bringing a lot of eyeballs to this fantastic sport. Where can people find out more about your work?
I guess YouTube. If you search my name, Magnus Midtbø, on YouTube, you'll find me probably. That's pretty much the only place I'm active. So
perfect, mate. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.